Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. Decided to do something a little different for this final episode of 2024. You're just getting me today. I don't have a guest. I don't have someone to ask me questions today. It's just me. So you are stuck listening to my voice on this episode. I wanted to do an end of year wrap up, just reflecting back on my first year doing a podcast, what that's looked like for me, some reflections that I have about this incredible first year, doing something that I never in a million years thought I would do, let alone do it for almost an entire year. And just wanted to share some thoughts about middle age with you as I look back on the incredible episodes that we created this year. And first of all, I just want to extend my sincere gratitude and thank everyone who listens. When I decided to do a podcast, I never, ever thought that anyone would actually listen to it. I don't know why I thought that, but I wanted to try it. And so here I am trying it and looking back now on a full year nearly of podcast episodes. It's just incredible to me that people listen and people tell me that they listen. And I get people who reach out to say, oh, that was a great episode, or I really took something away from that episode. And that just floors me every time. I don't think I'll ever get used to that. And maybe that's something that people doing podcasts often find themselves feeling, but I'm certainly feeling that. I decided to start a podcast back in 2023. I listened to podcasts for years and always thought it would be really fun to do a podcast, but that was for someone else. That's not something that I ever thought I would do. But when my sister and her business partner started their podcast, I thought, wow, maybe I could actually do this. I had been on a podcast episode back in 2021. It was a podcast called Adventures in Autism. It's no longer around, but I really enjoyed being a guest on a podcast, but again, never thought I would do one. And then when my sister and her business partner started theirs, I was on an episode of their podcast. And about that time, I purchased a course and didn't do anything with it for 8 months. The course was how to start a podcast from inception of idea to all the way through releasing your first episode. And I never thought that I would do it. I didn't do anything with the course for 8 months. They released the course, the people that created it, and I didn't do a single lesson. It was a video-based course, self-paced, and I didn't do a thing with it. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, gosh, I'd better do something with this, never thinking that I would actually create my own podcast. But as I was working my way through the course, I realized that I could do this. And I think the technology was what scared me the most, but I was gifted podcasting equipment from my sister and her business partner, which was very generous of them to do. And it dawned on me that I could actually do this. Part of the course was, it included a community like chat board. So other people taking the course could post comments, ask questions of other people who were taking the course. And I put something out there about what I thought I wanted my podcast to be about. I got some good feedback on it. That's how I met my friend Candace Frazier. Candace, if you're listening, she responded, was one of the first people to respond, just affirming my idea. Candace hosts her own podcast, The Couch Next Door. If you don't listen to that, you should. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can really do this. So that's how it all started, just with a lot of doubt, questioning, a little bit of fear, but excitement as well. I focused on middle age because at that time, I just didn't feel like there was a lot of content out there for people in my age range. I was 40, going on 49 at the time, and just wasn't seeing a lot out there. And so I thought, well, it would be fun to talk to other people who are in this season of life and what's going on in their lives. I feel like middle age is an interesting time. There's a lot going on. And I think it's easy to dismiss a lot of that, but there's so much going on in middle age. And I just thought that would be fascinating to talk to people in this season of life about a lot of different topics. And that's what we did. The first 2 seasons were really that, for sure. So I wanted to start the podcast to create community. That was my why. That was why I wanted to do it, because I feel like when you have community, even if it's around a very specific area, it is validating, and it helps to know that you're not the only one that might be experiencing something or going through something. It's validating that the way that you might be feeling or experiencing life is real and true. And so that was the goal, was to build community around people who are in middle age. And people always ask me, well, what's middle age to you? And I guess in my mind, it was like 40 and older was kind of the threshold. But honestly, I think it's anyone in kind of this middle stage where you're not in your 20s, maybe even early 30s. I don't know, maybe mid 30s and up. I don't know what constitutes middle age, but in that season where your kids might be a little bit older, you might be at a more middle or late stage in your career. You might be heading into retirement. Might be, looking at that. You're a person who, if you're a woman, you might be heading into perimenopause or in perimenopause, as many of us are. We might be dealing with changes in relationships, in parenting, and so many other things. And so that was kind of the audience, I guess, I was going for. And that's based on my statistics, which I'll share a few of those here in a second. That's exactly what's happened. So that's really, really neat. But I think people in middle age sometimes feel a bit invisible, like we're past our prime. We don't have anything to offer. And what I have found over the past year, recording these episodes with these amazing people who have been so willing to share and be vulnerable and brave and share with me about their lives, is that there's still so much going on. We still have so much to offer in all areas of our life. I've talked to many people over this past year who have done episodes with me that are starting something new, doing something they never thought they would do, or even going through something they never thought they would have to face or go through. And it's just affirming to me that this season of life has so many layers. It's so complex, and we still have so much to offer. The podcast, my first episode released January 8th. It was a get to know me episode. My husband, God bless him, he asked me questions just because I felt like it was important for the audience to know who they were talking to, or who they were listening to, I guess is a better way to say it. And so January 8th was the first official episode. I think I had a little short trailer that came out before that, but as far as an actual episode, it was published on January 8th. And since then, there's been a total of 45 full episodes. That doesn't include like season updates or trailers or anything like that. So just that alone, to me, that I've recorded, edited, and published 45 podcast episodes this past year is just amazing to me. And I guess if you count this one, it's 46. So that in and of itself is just awesome, that I've been able to do this on a consistent basis for a year. And honestly, that was another goal when I started the podcast was I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I'd never done anything like this before. I tend to be a person who wants to be in the background. I don't want to be in the forefront of anything. And so for me to kind of put myself out there was actually really scary. But the fact that I've done this now 46 times this past year, I've created a good system for myself of how I do everything, how I connect with guests, how I provide information to guests, how I edit the episodes, publish the episodes and everything. And so just the fact that I did it was it still just kind of is mind-boggling to me. Another statistic about the podcast that I was shocked to see was that people in 6 different countries have listened to all or part of at least one episode, which again just floors me that of course the US is the primary country, but so there's 5 other countries outside of the United States where people are sitting that they've listened to an episode of this podcast. Just again, completely shocking to me. Of course, the majority of listeners are women. 96% are women. And little over half, 51%, are between the ages of 45 and 54 years old, which is, to be quite honest, a target audience for me, with the next age range being 22% are 35 to 44 years. So between the ages of 35 and 54 years, that's 83 or 73% of listeners are in that age range. So it's great because I feel like I'm reaching my target demographic of folks that I wanted to hear this podcast. So that's really exciting. For those of you that aren't statisticians, I'll end with the numbers, but it just is so cool to me that not only are people listening, but the people that I was hoping to reach are listening, which is fantastic to me, which I love that so much. After the Get to Know Me episode, the first season was really just focused on talking to people about a variety of things. In the first season, we talk about parenting. Specifically, we had some episodes about transitions in parenting. We talk about parenting neurodivergent children, which my son is neurodivergent. He's on the autism spectrum and has ADHD. And so I talked to a few moms on the podcast who are parenting neurodivergent children, older children. And I think that's really important because I think when you have a child of any type of disability or different needs, I think we hear a lot. We don't hear as much about what it's like to parent an older child. And by older child, I'm saying like teen and older into adulthood. And I'm in that season at the moment, and it's interesting because there's lots of things you have to deal with and face as a parent of an older child with disabilities that when they're little, you really don't have to deal with. And I'm not trying to scare anyone who's parenting a younger child with disabilities. If you're listening to this, I'm not going to say it gets easier. I'm going to say it's different. But we talked to several parents about that. We talked to several parents about transitions in parenting and what it's like to watch these kiddos who you've seen probably every day of their life moving on with their lives, graduating from high school, taking their first jobs, going to college, moving out of your home, and what that's like and how bittersweet that can be. So we talked about parenting a lot in the first and second season. We also talked about career quite a bit. We talked to people who are starting new careers, like literally starting over in a lot of cases because they maybe lost a job or were laid off or just chose to start something new, whether it be a new degree. We talked to someone who's completing their master's degree. We talked to people who are starting new businesses or have owned their own business for quite some time and what that's like and how they balance that with family and being an entrepreneur as a middle-aged woman, what that's like. And so that was incredible because I think, again, a lot of people in our season of life, this middle age time, are looking at mid to late career, heading into retirement. And that is definitely a transition in and of itself. But I also talk to just as many people who are starting something new in this season. So starting, a business, or starting a degree, or starting something new with a spouse, or whatever the case might be. Um, it just astounded me. And I think it goes to show that in this season, it's not too late to dream a new dream or start something new if that's something that's on your heart, if you're feeling called to do that. I think that it it really is a testament to how innovative and creative and fearless we can be when it comes to starting something new in middle age. So that was really neat to see that. We talk about well-being quite a bit as well. I had several folks on who talked about how to take care of your physical health, your mental health in midlife, because it's different. In middle age, if you think the things you did in your 20s to take care of yourself are going to work, you're mistaken. Now, it's not that it's not the same principles, but it's a little bit different. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of those episodes, because it's important to know that our health needs, our physical health needs change, and our mental health needs even evolve and change as we get older and are going through a lot of these transitions that I mentioned earlier. And it's important. It's all important to focus on those aspects of our lives. It's not something to be forgotten. If anything, there needs to be more of a focus on our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health in middle age. And I had some great guests. Stephanie Neighbor Cubic, my friend Candace Frazier, who's a licensed professional counselor. Carrie Brown Ben came on and talked a little about menopause. There's so much out there around all of those topics, and it can get overwhelming. So in those episodes, I really tried to have straightforward, simple, easy, clear information so that we can just remind ourselves that it's important. And I know a lot of you that are listening are already doing a lot of these things. So just a great reinforcement for the things that you're doing. So we talked about well-being. We also talked about relationships in terms of divorce. We talk about a new relationship. Kristen and Travis were on and talked about a new relationship after both of their spouses passed away and what that's been like for them to navigate that. We talked to my dear friend Melinda, who shared very vulnerably her feelings about divorce on the podcast. So it was just incredible to hear their stories of things that, they didn't anticipate in their lives, and how they have navigated that. I also talked with Dr. Jennifer Smith about the loss of her husband, Daryl, and how she's navigated that time in her life and what that has looked like for her. It's how it's impacted her in her life as well. So just so many incredible guests who, again, were so willing and vulnerable and brave to share. I talked to my friend Jamie Klusacek about how she stepped into her calling so faithfully when everything in her was wanting to say no. She left a career to start writing books. I talked to Jessica Copley about her life now as her kids are older, and she's continuing to practice a lot of healing in terms of doing Reiki and her own personal health journey that she's been on, and her faith journey that she's been on, and just different things that she's been through. So again, just so many layers in middle age that I think it's just easy to to forget about, that we're all going through those things. I talked to Lucia, who so beautifully and eloquently shared about her daughter who passed away and how she has chosen to thrive even while grieving the loss of her daughter. So those first two seasons were and that was just the first two seasons. If you haven't listened to some of those episodes, I would just really encourage you to do so. They're so good. And my first two seasons of guests, again, they were brave. They were willing to come on the podcast when it wasn't, really, nobody even really knew about it at that point. So I was so honored that they all chose to join me in those initial episodes, because they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And they were they were so faithful to just jump on board and willing, and they all did an amazing job. All of those episodes are great. And so that was for the first two seasons. And I, I even myself go back and listen to some of those, because it's great just to hear how the podcast has evolved over time, but also just the content in those episodes are great. In July of 2024, I turned 50. And so I wanted to do a really short series with other people who were turning 50. And I did an episode myself. My son actually asked me a few questions about what it feels like to turn 50. And then I talked to 3 other women who also turned 50 in 2024. And what I loved about those episodes was that each one was very different, and each person had different thoughts and perspectives. Talking to all of them, they all had unique feelings and thoughts about turning 50. But the theme that I felt like ran through each of those episodes was how great they felt about turning 50. I think in our culture, we get this message that turning a certain age or reaching a certain age is, oh, well, it's over. You're this age, you're heading, you're down the hill, over the hill, I think is actually the way it's said. But that is just the exact opposite feeling that I got from Deb and Pam and Rena. They were all so excited and hopeful and forward looking and excited for the future. And that's what I loved about that short season. And I feel the same way. I've told so many people lately that, I turned 50. I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm doing some things in my life that I never, ever thought I would do. And it's amazing. The next season was focused on caregiving for aging adults. And I did a season on that specific topic. It's just something that's been very near and dear to my heart. And it's important because I think a lot of us in middle age either have parents, other family members, maybe even a spouse or partner who is in need of care because of a chronic condition. They might be dealing with a health condition. They might be dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's. They might be, and maybe the condition they have isn't long-term or terminal, but we find ourselves in a caregiving role that maybe we never thought we would find ourselves in. And so it was important to me to share about caregiving, because it's something, if you're not dealing with it right now as a person of middle age, you will be dealing with it again, whether it's for an aging parent or an aging spouse or partner someday. It will happen. Or you might be the one in need of care. And so it was important for me to share about resources and things to think about. The other thing that really got me to thinking about it was I got my AARP card this year because I turned 50. And AARP does a lot of focus on resources for caregivers. And so it just kind of struck me like I want to put this out there because it's important. Kathy Good from the Chris and Susie DeWolf Family Innovation Center did 4 episodes with me. God bless Kathy. She really hung in there with me. And we talk about resources. We talk about her personal caregiving journey with her husband. If you live in Eastern Iowa and you are caregiving or anticipating becoming a caregiver, you need to reach out to the Innovation Center, because the amount of resources they have, the amazing people that are there, it's just, I went on a tour of the center and it's absolutely incredible. Even if you don't live in this area, even if you're out of state and you are finding yourself in this caregiving season, reach out to them. They can help you get connected to resources and provide you with just a wealth of information that you will find helpful. And also, if nothing else, they are a listening ear. There's someone who that is there that can probably relate to what you're going through. And so I would just highly recommend reaching out to them. There's information in the show notes of each of the episodes on how you can connect with the Innovation Center. And I would just highly recommend that you do that. And then the kind of second half of that caregiving season, I talked to 5 caregivers who were either currently providing care for someone or have provided care for someone. And their stories, they're not just inspiring, but they're also full of hope. And I think that's not something that you often affiliate with elder caregiving. A lot of people think of it as, the end, and that it's, there's no joy. And yes, there are very, very hard things about caregiving. Absolutely. Ask anyone that's caregiving for someone right now or has provided care. But when I talk to each of those individuals, Alice, Tom, Tracy, Susie, and Gail, all of them also talked about connection, and they talked about hope, and they talked about how willing people are to be accepting, understanding, advocates, all of those things. And during a time when they or someone they love is having a really difficult time. So their stories are just amazing. If you just want to be uplifted and inspired, definitely listen to those episodes. I also shared an episode with Shelley Halverson, who has created something called a lifetime gift. Listen to that episode. Lifetime gift is really a system for you to kind of put all of your ducks in a row, if you will. If you have someone you're caring for, or if you're anticipating, your own aging and want to provide peace of mind to your family, the system she has developed, it's not only comprehensive, but it's really affordable. And there's a link in the show notes to how you can get a hold of Shelley and get a copy of her lifetime gift system. Shelley also does presentations for organizations. She can also meet with you one-on-one, but she does presentations for organizations. So you have a group at your church or your place of employment, and you think this would be something that people would be interested in, reach out to Shelley, because her system is just great. The final season of 2024 was with some absolutely incredible women who are just people that I have met, some people I've known for a while, and they're just doing some really cool stuff. That's all the best way I can say it. They're just doing some cool stuff in middle age. And I was so uplifted and inspired by each of their stories, because they are, and it's not like, they're out there, it's not like massively huge things, but they're uplifting things. They're inspiring things. Again, it was just that reminder to me that in this season, there's so much that we have yet to accomplish. We can dream new dreams. We can start new things, do new things, even out of tough circumstances sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot. And for some people, it can be life-changing. So those final episodes of 2024 kicked it off with Lindsay Leahy, who recently released her new book called Take It All Apart. And if you haven't gotten a copy of Lindsay's book, you need to run and go get a copy. It is absolutely phenomenal. I've read it once, and I think I'm going to reread it in the new year, just because there are so many nuggets of wisdom and things you can actually do and apply in your life. So run and get a copy of Lindsay's book. I talked to Nancy Link, who has been in the financial banking industry for years and just has experienced some new things, some things that she's doing to take care of herself, and things that I just found so inspiring that she's doing. So check out her episode. I talked to Greta Nance, who honestly, if you're not following Greta on social media, you need to. I'm on Instagram mostly, but she is just awesome. She's someone who I met through my surgeon's office, and she's absolutely incredible and fun. And she will just inspire you to be who you are, be authentic, be fearless. And so I think you'll really love the episode with Greta. I talked with Jenny Chadima about her new role at with a local organization here. And Jenny was just so incredibly vulnerable to share her journey, not just to starting that new role that she's in, but also she shares about her journey to sobriety. And I was so touched. She shares a personal entry from her journal, and it's just a great episode. So check that one out. I talked to my friend Jill Wojciechowski about how she started her new photography business. And I think if you're someone who is in a season of unknowing in terms of maybe you find yourself in a career that you're just not happy with, or you found yourself recently laid off or something, I think you'll find that Jill's story is very relatable and inspirational at the same time. I also talked with Jody Stepanek, who really went through kind of a major transformation and has started her meditation practice and has turned it into just such an incredible way for she works with athletes, she works with individuals, she works with groups, she does retreats. And I sitting with Jody, she's just one of those people that when you are with her, you just feel better. She has this way of focusing on you like you're the only person in the room. And so again, highly encourage you to listen to that episode. I also talked to Jay Westgard, who, despite going through some really challenging personal circumstances, she's continuing to show up in her life as a mom, as a practitioner, serving her clients. She's not letting go of dreams that she has. She's pursuing things, and just listening to her and how she's continuing to further her education so that she can serve her clients well, even despite going through tough times. It was so amazing to hear her story. And then the last episode that was released December 23rd was with Dawn Sparling. I worked with Dawn for many years, and Dawn has such an interesting story. She is on what she calls her adult gap year. And you just have to listen to it because she talks about how for the first time she's really comfortable in her own skin, and she's experiencing such joy and freedom in this new season of her life. And she just did a monologue on stage in Canada. I linked to it in the show notes of that episode. She did that in October, and you just got to watch it because she just shines. Honestly, she sparkles and she shines for sure. I told myself when I started recording this episode, I wasn't going to go through every episode, but honestly, I really could because I think they're all great. And of course, I know that I'm biased, but anyway, again, I just want to express my dear and sincere gratitude to everyone who listens to the podcast. I want to express gratitude to everyone that's been a guest on the podcast this year. I sometimes I still can't believe that I've been doing this for a year. And I'm so excited for what is to come. I've got some exciting things happening in 2025. We're going to kick off a new season soon. And I'm pursuing some other things personally that I'm really excited to share with everyone. Um, Sprinkled throughout some of the episodes in the first year of the podcast, you hear me talk about the Enneagram, and you may or may not be familiar with what that is, but I decided to pursue um, becoming a certified Enneagram coach. And so I want to do an Enneagram season on the podcast at some point. So I'm looking forward to that. And just so many cool and amazing things that are coming. I'm very excited about it. I'm going to keep going with this podcast because it's not only incredibly fun, but it's been invigorating for me at 50 to start something completely new that I never thought I could do. Again, thank you so much. I'm recording this with just such a full heart, full of gratitude. And thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast. Be sure to follow the podcast on the platform that you listen on so that the new episodes will land in your feed. I release episodes usually weekly, so be on the lookout for those. And I want to wish everyone a very happy, healthy, safe, and wonderful new year. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram at Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.